Discover the incredible moment when an old veteran transformed 12 U.S. Marine snipers aim forever. Frank stared out at the placid lake, the reflection of the sunrise casting a golden hue across the water. At 91, he often felt like a spectral remnant of his past, a whisper of the man he once was amidst the cacophony of life he no longer felt part of. The quiet of his retirement in Ohio trapped him in routine fishing, reminiscing, and thumbing through faded medals in dusty boxes. His glory days loomed large in his memory, yet he felt increasingly invisible, his experiences fading into the wall of time. That all changed when whispers of a Marine training base nearby trickled down to him, a group of 12 raw and anxious snipers, much like the eager soldier he had been, grappling with self-doubt and haunting remnants of past battles. The thought ignited something within him. Was this not a chance to rekindle his own purpose? What did he have to lose? Yet, what did he have to offer a new generation that seemed so worlds apart? As he walked toward the training grounds, a sudden wave of hesitation washed over him. What could an old veteran possibly teach these young men? They were hardened, molded by a different battlefield, their rifles advanced in ways he could hardly grasp. The gnawing doubts clawed at his mind, making him question if his once honed skills and wisdom were still relevant. What if they laughed him off, dismissed his attempts to impart knowledge? Would he be left more alone than before? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The Marines' glances were skeptical, their youth and experience creating an insurmountable barrier that Frank felt keenly. Could he bridge that gap? Or was he merely projecting his own failures onto them? Daily, the burden of impending competition loomed closer, amplifying the pressure not just for them, but for him too. The growing camaraderie was sprinkled with unspoken hesitation. Could they accept guidance from someone who felt so far removed from modern warfare? Every day brought a fresh battle against self-doubt. The ghosts of his own lost comrades whispered in his ears, demanding he confront his past missteps while trying to mold the present. What if, amidst all this, his inadequacies overshadowed the wisdom he longed to share? As he witnessed their struggles, he felt their tension resonate within himself, a reflection of his own uncertainties. As the day approached, the air thickened with expectations and unshed fear that held the truth. Would they falter when faced with the weight of competition, succumbing to the very uncertainties Frank sought to vanquish? And as he took his place alongside them, standing shoulder to shoulder at the firing line, he wrestled with a terrifying realization: could he in fact discover a new purpose that intertwined their paths in this moment of reckoning? Just as the first shot rang out, time hung heavy with unanswered questions. Was this finally the moment where legacy and mentorship would collide, or would it all come crashing down? The crack of the rifle broke the stillness of the early morning. Frank stood rigidly, his gaze locked on the target 50 yards ahead. Memories of his own training surged through him: long hours in the field, the scent of gunpowder, anxious breaths before the shot. Yet, those moments were shrouded in the fog of time, and he could hardly relate to the weapon systems these snipers wielded. He was faced with a jarring truth: this was not just about teaching skills, it was about navigating the treacherous waters of his own insecurities. The tension was palpable as the first sniper stepped up, the rifle steady in his hands, yet his knuckles betrayed his anxiety. Frank instinctively felt for the young man's spirit. Would the weight of fear crush him under the expectations? Could he coax that fear into something transformative? A whisper of encouragement bubbled up from deep within him, but as he opened his mouth to speak, silence hung heavily around them. "Find your center," he finally said, his voice trembling. It was a simple remark, one that he hoped might resonate amid their technological jargon. The young sniper hesitated, glancing at Frank with wide eyes that reflected both doubt and curiosity. In that instant, Frank saw a flicker of the desperation he once felt: a drive to prove himself, to find belonging among the most elite. Stepping forward, he positioned himself beside the young sniper, gesturing expansively at the sight. Every shot starts with your mind. Focus not just on the target, but your own intent. Release what weighs you down. Frank's heart hammered as he realized he was sharing not just tactical advice but a piece of himself, a rare glimpse into the depth of vulnerability that worried at him. The young sniper adjusted his grip, visibly relaxing as if unlocking a door that had been tightly shut. Frank's confidence swelled as he witnessed the transformation. There was something profoundly gratifying about bearing witness to that subtle shift both in himself and the young man beside him. The tension between the two began to dissolve, and with it, Frank's fears began to ebb. Encouraged by the small breakthrough, Frank embraced the role he thought he could never hold. Each day passed with fewer doubts and more shared moments, Frank imparting not just skills but lessons about resilience, sacrifice, and grit. He found ways to connect with the snipers, sharing brave tales from his tumultuous past, simultaneously gripped by the emotional heaviness that haunted him. It became cathartic, each exchange chipped away at decades of solitude. The weeks rolled by, their camaraderie growing, yet the looming specter of their final assessments grew larger. Setting aside his fears, Frank began visualizing the potential outcomes not just for the snipers, but for himself. The pressure had begun to feel less like an anchor and more like a keen-edged blade, ready to carve a new path forward. Then came the day of the final evaluation. The air crackled with anxiety, and Frank stood at the sidelines, witnessing the culmination of their training. Each shot rang out with a decisive clarity. As the evaluation progressed, he scrutinized their expressions, sensing the weight of expectations on them. It was exhilarating and terrifying to be so invested in their journey, yet his own resolve teetered precariously on the edge of their success. In that crucible of pressure, Frank felt a seismic shift within him. He saw not just his past struggles reflected in their eyes, but the promise of what lay ahead. The moment called out to him with undeniable force, to embrace that potential for growth, both theirs and his own. As the last shot echoed into silence, Frank felt a strange rush. He wouldn't hide in the shadows of time anymore. But could he now shift from mentor to something more? The uncertainty remained, and he recognized that this was not the end but a vibrant beginning. The question loomed, would he have the courage to seize it? The day's events left lingering doubts in the air. But one thing was certain: Frank was no longer a mere observer but a participant in his own narrative, and the stakes had never felt higher. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of feedback and apprehension. Frank reveled in the aftermath of their assessment, a sense of accomplishment saturating his thoughts. Yet, alongside that glow, an unsettling anxiety nagged at the edges of his mind. Each evening, as he replayed the day's events, he was struck by the realization that their success was not merely a reflection of his mentorship, it was an inception of his own self-discovery. He spent hours contemplating his next steps. The Marine snipers had transformed under his guidance, and their confidence had ignited a flicker of something dormant within him. It was intoxicating, yet intimidating. How could he continue this momentum beyond the scope of their training? With each passing day, Frank remained shadowed by the gnawing uncertainty of whether he could sustain this newfound purpose. One afternoon, he approached the range with a sense of determination. There was work to be done. Frank decided that he would facilitate an open discussion, an honest space where the snipers could voice their challenges and reflections. He suspected that vulnerability would build stronger bonds, and perhaps even reveal truths about himself he had long buried. Gathering them around, he initiated the conversation. "We've all been through our share of struggles," he began, noticing the stiff posture of the young sniper, the one who had flourished under Frank's initial encouragement. "But today, I want to hear about your fears. What did this evaluation mean to you?" The question hung in the air, and an awkward silence ensued. Finally, a hand shot up. It was the sniper with trembling hands. "I thought I would freeze under pressure, like I always do. But I didn't," he confessed, a hint of disbelief coloring his tone. "I focused on what you said, on my intent." Frank felt a flicker of pride ignite within him, but he sensed a deeper connection brewing in the gathering. As others started to share their own vulnerabilities, moments of self-doubt, personal fears, the conversation became a powerful tapestry of interwoven emotions. Each revelation chipped away at the barriers they had built around their experiences, making room for honesty and understanding, but amidst this catharsis, a deep-seated concern crept back into Frank's mind. He felt an urgency to be more than a guide. The snipers had placed their trust in him, and he feared that he might not be prepared for the next challenge, one that involved not only nurturing their skills but also transcending his personal limits. Could he continue to be the supportive figure they needed, while confronting the very insecurities that had kept him grounded? "Is there anything you all want to share about me?" Frank finally asked, his voice unexpectedly steady. Shock swept across the faces before him, and for a brief moment he felt vulnerable, exposed. Would they see his cracks? Would they judge him for his uncertainty? After a moment, the young sniper spoke again. "You pushed us, made us believe we could do it. I think that's what I appreciated most." Others nodded in agreement. Their words, forged through authenticity, struck at the heart of his self-doubt. If they regarded him as a beacon of encouragement, then perhaps he could step out from the shadows of his past. The weight of his role began to transform. As they delved deeper into their stories, Frank realized that genuine connection was a catalyst for progress, not just for them, but for him as well. It became evident that facing insecurities head-on could illuminate hidden paths toward his growth, but just as hope shimmered on the horizon, Frank's phone buzzed with a message, a reminder of the upcoming leadership conference focused on veteran issues. An unexpected invitation dangled before him, an opportunity to share his journey with a broader audience. Should he step into the spotlight? Embrace this chance to redefine his narrative completely? The thought sent a rush of unease and exhilaration through him. The moment had arrived, echoing the same question that haunted him since the first assessment: would he have the courage to seize it? As the discussion concluded, Frank stood among the snipers, a new purpose igniting within him. He was not just their mentor anymore, he was learning along with them. But the anticipation of the conference loomed larger than life, and within him swirled the pulse of possibility intertwined with an undercurrent of fear. Could he truly rise to the occasion, leaving behind the shadows for good? That question hung palpably in the balance, ready for resolution in the days ahead. Frank stood in the stillness of the training yard, the sun casting a warm glow across the field, yet within him churned an internal tempest. The invitation to speak at the leadership conference loomed over him, an almost tangible pressure. Seizing this opportunity could catalyze his growth, but the paradox of doubt seeped into his resolve. What if he couldn't articulate his journey? What if exposing his struggles rendered him vulnerable in a way he wasn't prepared to handle? The thought clawed at his stomach, fueling his anxiety into exhaustion. It was on his shoulders now, the weight of self-expectation pressing down heavily. "Think of it as just another session with the snipers," he muttered to himself, pacing along the edge of the range. The words felt hollow. Could he really equate this moment to any of those discussions, where they'd peeled back layers to reveal their fears? No, this was different. This would be an audience of leaders, a platform with the potential to reverberate beyond these walls. In ordered chaos, the snipers filtered through their drills on the range, and Frank couldn't help but observe them with renewed intensity. Their confident maneuvers mirrored the very transformation he had instilled in them, yet he felt like a spectator. They had come so far, but the image of the fractured mentor, someone still navigating their own shadows, steadily clawed at him. "Frank." The familiar voice stirred him from his thoughts. It was the young sniper, the same one who had bravely divulged his own fears. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure," Frank replied, your voice reflecting his growing sense of unease. He motioned for the sniper to join him. There was a moment's hesitation on the sniper's face, and it struck Frank a common thread of apprehension that wound through both of them. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said in our last session," the sniper began, his face momentarily shadowed by the weight of words unspoken. "You keep pushing us to dig deeper, but are you doing the same?" The question caught Frank off guard, slicing through his reserve. "What do you mean? Are you pushing yourself?" You talk about trusting us, but you always seem, I don't know, distant when it comes to your own stuff. What is going on with you, Frank? The directness was refreshing, yet it rattled him like an earthquake beneath his footing. He didn't want to burden them with his insecurities, and yet the very fabric of trust they had built beckoned him to share. Here was an opportunity born from vulnerability, mirroring what he had sought to inspire in them. Honestly? Frank paused, searching for the right words. I've been given a chance to speak at a leadership conference soon. And it terrifies me. The sniper's expression shifted, a blend of understanding and respect radiating from him. You've taught us that fear can either paralyze or propel us. Isn't this your moment to do the same? Their gaze locked, and in that brief silence, Frank felt the echoes of his own lessons resonate. The young sniper was right. He, too, had been hiding, afraid of falling short in front of those who had learned to see him as a figure of strength. Maybe I need to seek the same vulnerability I've encouraged in all of you, Frank admitted, his heart racing but a newfound clarity breaking through. Absolutely, the sniper grinned, enthusiasm charging the air between them. If you can stand there and own your journey, think of how it could inspire others. With that simple affirmation, a flicker of resolve ignited within Frank. Transformation wasn't just a linear path, it demanded an embrace of every hurdle along the way, every fear, every triumph. It was time to step into the spotlight and share not just their victories, but the shadows that tempered their strength. The conference could be his turning point, or it could be just another stage where he faltered. But either way, the risk felt exhilarating, intoxicating even. As they turned back toward the range, Frank couldn't shake the realization that perhaps the act of sharing his insecurities would not only breathe life into his journey but also solidify the bond he'd forged with his snipers. The moment felt ripe with uncharted potential, but as he gathered himself, a new message appeared on his phone. It glowed ominously, hinting at an unforeseen obstacle. Frank's heart sank. The message implored him to reconsider his appearance at the conference due to unforeseen personal circumstances. Caught in a whirlwind of decision, he felt the connection to his journey tighten. Would he let the chance slip away? Or confront whatever was trying to pull him back into the shadows? Frank inhaled sharply, staring at the glowing screen, heart racing not just from the disruption, but from the fear of losing a moment that could define him. His pulse thrummed with urgency, thoughts spiraling. Could he turn down this invitation? As a mentor, he had repeatedly instructed his snipers to confront their hesitations head-on. Yet here he was, poised on a precipice, teetering between fear and opportunity. The weight of the message pressed on him like an anchor, threatening to drag him away from the promise of sharing his story. No. He wouldn't let it. The evolution of an individual was rife with challenges, and he wouldn't allow this moment to be swept aside by external pressures. His resolve fortified, Frank decided to confront the disruption rather than evade it. This conference, his story, the power of vulnerability each held the potential to reshape the way he saw himself, and more importantly, how others could too. He thumbed out a response, deliberating on every word as he declared his intention to attend. The moment he hit send, a surge of adrenaline coursed through him. Was he ready to embrace this instability? Each heartbeat shouted yes, louder than the creeping doubts silencing his mind. His thoughts returned to the young sniper and their earlier conversation. When had he allowed himself to become so distant? He pondered over the badges of strength he wore, but realized that true strength meant showing up fully for others. Just as he had urged his snipers to dig deep, he too needed to press beneath the surface. There was triumph in the struggle, an illumination of character that could inspire a narrative worth sharing. With newfound clarity, he greeted another sniper unloading equipment on the range. Each sound, gunfire, distinct and sharp, echoed the rhythmic sounds of his own heart, steadying him. "Hey, Frank, everything good?" the sniper asked, picking up on Frank's focused demeanor. "Just thinking," he replied, the words spilling out as if they were a decision made long before. "I'm going to share my story at that conference. It's time I confronted my own fears." The sniper's eyes lit up. That's great. One of the best lessons from you is how to own it. Frank felt the warmth of their shared experience, memories flooding back of late-night drills and honest conversations. He pondered all the times vulnerability opened windows their fears had tried to seal shut. Those were moments where they bonded deeper, not just as soldiers, but as human beings navigating the complexities of life itself. Conversation shifted between them, teasing depths of introspection that shattered the silence. Within him, a fire began to blaze. The prospect of owning his story felt electrifying, shifting his focus from the fear of public speaking to an opportunity for authentic connection. However, as he prepared to leave the range, a nagging apprehension settled within. What would it mean for his career if he didn't succeed? Was sharing his journey worth the risk of exposing his imperfections to leaders who relied on posturing? Yet deep down, he comprehended that progress demanded honesty about himself and about the path forward. Determined, Frank made his way to the entrance but paused. Thoughts curdled, an unsettling intuition whispered beneath his excitement. What lay ahead wasn't just a chance to inspire but a confrontation with his deepest fears. The shadows were still present, and as his phone vibrated again, he felt a pulse of dread pulse through him. This time it was an alert for a meeting he couldn't ignore, a gathering that could shake the very foundations of his leadership principles. What decisions would he need to make to reconcile his own fears while navigating this new challenge? He glanced back at the sniping field, a place of transformation, where he had equipped others to confront their struggles. Now, he had to do the same for himself. Taking a steadying breath, he opened the message, the uncertainty of whatever was to come swirling ominously around him. Would this meeting become the turning point that defined not just his own journey, but the paths of those who looked up to him? The moment of truth was approaching. Frank stepped into the conference room, the air thick with the weight of unspoken expectations. The polished surface of the large, rectangular table mirrored the tension in his mind. Shadows folded into corners, and the muted colors of the room bore an eerily sterile silence that heightened his awareness of each quiet breath he took. As he settled into a chair, he glanced around at the others seated there, men and women who had ascended through layers of leadership, all seasoned, focused, ready to dissect plans and performance metrics. Their eyes held a mix of curiosity and skepticism that immediately ignited the familiar imposter feeling he thought he'd left behind. Could he really offer them anything of value? As the meeting convened, Frank's initial uncertainty began to recede. The discussion swiftly maneuvered through a barrage of tallies, successes triggered by strategic maneuvers from leaders whose focus was locked onto results but often missed the emotional undercurrents pulsing through their team. Something stirred within him, a reckoning of sorts. It wasn't enough just to present numbers and methodologies. The strength of a leader lay in revealing the collective human experience. He found himself leaning into the conversation, daring to intertwine his narrative with theirs, each sentence a thread weaving personal vulnerability into the fabric of operational success. In the field, we rely on instincts, sometimes over analysis, he said, his voice steadying. When we understand what motivates our team from the inside out, we unlock true potential. I've seen that transformation in my snipers. A silence followed that pulled the room into itself, intrigued but uncertain. Questions danced in the air, but he also sensed an opening, a glimmer of acceptance. Frank pressed on, sharing stories where fear and vulnerability had birthed real connection, authenticity that cut through the armor soldiers often wore. Yet as he spoke, another fear crept in, the risk of exposing too much. What if the others saw weakness rather than courage? The stakes felt uncomfortably high. He was challenging established norms, echoing his own childhood confusion where vulnerability was often mistaken for defeat. As if sensing his trepidation, a fellow officer leaned forward, cutting through Frank's internal spiral. What you're saying is vital. We can't quantify heart. How do we engage it? The question hung before him, mirroring his journey of self-discovery in that very moment. This was a crossroads not just for him, but for the people reliant on him for guidance. Frank recognized the instant engagement came from authenticity. By revealing personal fears, he had empowered the young snipers to confront theirs. Engage with stories, he responded, conviction burning anew within him. When we embrace our vulnerabilities, we embolden others to confront theirs. That's when transformation happens. The weight of his words settled, and for the first time, he noticed nods of understanding. They were architects of decisions, vital to shifting narrative in their sphere of influence. Could this actually be the catalyst for change he envisioned? As the meeting drew to a close, the emotions in the room transformed from skepticism to resonance. Frank had stepped into an uncertain realm of leadership, one where he could steer his team not merely with strategies, but with stories of shared fears and triumphs, yet outside the meeting room, the full impact of what he had just undertaken loomed over him. He hadn't only opened the door to his journey, he had invited vulnerability into a domain where it typically fled. Would this new approach redefine his leadership style? As he exited the room, adrenaline coursing, he caught a glimpse of the horizon outside. The challenges ahead were clearer yet heavier, each requiring him to face both professional and personal demons. How could he ensure this wasn't a one-time breakthrough? Frank's phone buzzed again, vibrating unexpectedly in his pocket, a message from the sniper he had confided in. The words on the screen ignited a twinge of anticipation mixed with dread. What awaited him now could either solidify his growth or unravel it entirely. He took a breath, acutely aware that his journey hadn't reached its apex yet, and the real test was just beginning. Frank's heart raced as he pulled the phone from his pocket, the screen illuminating his face in the dim corridor. The message was concise yet loaded, ready to talk. "You spoke, now it's time I shared." Each word stirred memories of the shy, anxious boy he once was, grappling with the need for approval and the suffocating fear of judgment. He stepped outside, seeking fresh air. The cool breeze was a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of the conference room. As he inhaled deeply, he realized the conversation he was about to have could either validate his recent choices or unearth his deepest insecurities. Would vulnerabilities exchanged lead to a powerful connection, or would he discover the perilous limits of openness in a military hierarchy? With each step towards the lot where he had parked, Frank's thoughts oscillated between excitement and apprehension. The sniper had always been direct and brave, a reflection of Frank's own hidden aspirations. He reached his car and paused, gripping the handle as though needing the metal's solidity before diving into this uncharted territory. What revelations awaited him? Frank drove to the secluded spot where they often trained, a deserted range surrounded by trees. The quietness contrasted sharply with his inner turmoil. How had he come to this moment? The thought of sharing the essence of his breakthrough with a man whose career revolved around precision and skill intensified the swirling conflict within him. Arriving at the range, he spotted the sniper leaning against a weathered wooden bench, arms crossed, an intent look on his face as he scanned the area. Frank stepped out of the car and approached, the weight of unspoken words heavy in the air. "Hey," he greeted, attempting a casual smile. "Hey. I've been thinking," the sniper replied, his tone serious. "About what you said in there. You talked about vulnerability like it was a weapon. But sometimes, showing your weakness can also be a liability, you know?" Frank felt his pulse quicken. "I get that, but vulnerability isn't the same as weakness. It's about connecting with our team, understanding their fears. Maybe. But trust is built on consistency. If we open too much, we risk losing that credibility. We're leaders, not friends. Shouldn't we keep a level of distance?" The sniper's eyes challenged him, but there lay an underlying curiosity. The question sliced through Frank, compelling him to confront his thoughts. He had always been steeped in the dichotomy of strength and vulnerability, but now it felt real, pressing against his core values. "I thought sharing could strengthen our bond, could invite them to be more human," he replied, feeling compelled to defend his stance. "Humans are unpredictable, Frank." The sniper straightened, the determination in his voice mirroring the rigidity of military doctrine. "Emotions complicate decisions, especially on the field. Are you sure you're ready to lead from that place? What about our mission?" The weight of the confrontation settled like a dense fog, each word a challenge to his newfound resolve. Frank's mind raced. Was he truly prepared to embrace this new leadership style? Could he really dismantle barriers when the culture around him demanded unwavering stoicism? The deliberation hung between them, fragile yet potent. Frank needed to respond decisively, unsure if sharing the weight of his past fears would augment or undermine the connection. Maybe it's time we redefine what leadership means for us, he proposed, feeling and stirring energy underpinning his earlier hesitance. How we engage our teams doesn't have to compromise our mission. It can enhance it. The sniper paused, contemplating his words. Yet deep inside, doubt lingered. Frank knew the real test was in forging this path through both connection and conviction, supporting his peers without losing his footing. How would he steer this conversation into a collaborative exploration without succumbing to the pressures that had always bound him? As the silence settled, Frank realized they both stood at a precipice, wrapped in the tension of their respective lives, a setting ripe for profound change or disastrous missteps. The next step could alter the trajectory of their leadership roles significantly. In that moment, another text vibrated in Frank's pocket, a different message, this time one that came from a higher command regarding an upcoming mission. The gravity of that news threatened to fracture the delicate conversation. Would this shift their dialogue from self-discovery to crisis mode? The moment of truth beckoned, and it was clear that no matter the outcome, he was compelled to confront the realities and risks entwined with vulnerability. Would he dare to push further or retreat into the safety of traditional leadership? The stakes had never felt higher, and as they stood there, ready to engage, Frank sensed that the real challenge was just beginning. The phone buzzed again, a stark reminder of the weight pressing on Frank's shoulders. He took a step back, letting his instincts kick in while he silently processed the dual pressures of the conversation with the sniper and the impending mission order. Was this message a summons to duty or an opportunity for further self-exploration? Everything okay? The sniper's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and alert. Yeah, Frank replied, though uncertainty inked his tone. Just got some intel about an upcoming mission. That'll do it, the sniper nodded, eyes narrowing slightly as if measuring Frank's readiness. We can pick this up after. Mission comes first, right? Was that a hint of relief or disappointment wavering in the sniper's voice? Frank fought the urge to dive back into their earlier discussion about leadership. It felt interrupted not just by the incoming call to action but by his own hesitations. The sniper had brought to light the complexities of vulnerability, yet here he was, faced with the immediate demands of warfare. The gravel crunched beneath Frank's boots as he paced a short distance away, trying to gather his thoughts. This mission, Frank began, focusing inward. What if the strategies we've held on to, things we've always believed were effective, are clouded by our commitment to tradition? A leader protects the unit, the sniper replied, a slight edge to his words. Sticking to what works has saved lives. You can't just turn it upside down because you're feeling something new. Frank took a deep breath, crossing the distance again to face the sniper. But what if what's always worked is setting us back? If I lead with authenticity, shouldn't that foster trust? Isn't there a chance addressing fears could actually strengthen us in battle? The sniper scoffed slightly, leaning back against the tall wooden bench as if it would support his disbelief. You think spilling your guts will make it easier when the bullets start flying? Frank clenched his jaw, frustration morphing into a rallying resolve. No, but I do believe showing them we're all human could build a bridge that sustains us when chaos erupts. Each man and woman on this team has fears that can be debilitating if left unchecked. The sniper's eyes flickered with something akin to intrigue. Perhaps curiosity? Frank felt a tether of possibility forming between them, a connection not tethered purely to duty. Look, I'm not saying your approach is wrong, I'm just wondering if you understand the risk, the sniper tempered, visibly considering the implications of Frank's assertion. Before you go championing this leap into vulnerability, remember the stakes. Frank's pulse quickened not just from the tension of their discussion, but also from the clarity dawning upon him. What could granting his team permission to feel do for operational effectiveness? What if bearing their vulnerabilities molded a unit more resilient, more cohesive? As this realization rooted deeper, Frank's focus shifted back to the mission. It was the perfect ground to test his hypothesis. What if this mission is our chance? We could pilot a new approach, encourage honest communication fine. But if it blows up in your face, the sniper's caution hung in the air, laced with impending tension. The fallout is mine to bear. Frank's answer came out steadier than he felt. With a newfound determination, Frank turned to the looming mission details on his phone, a message that blended duty with the potential for growth. Buried beneath the weight of expectations, a flicker of excitement ignited. Assuming the role of a leader willing to redefine conventions might just be the transformation he'd been searching for. Let's touch base with the rest of the team, he suggested, stepping forward with deliberation. Yet even as he spoke, doubt creased his brow. Would they respond? Were his ideas feasible in the sterile environment created by militaristic norms? As the weight of what lay ahead wrapped around him, he couldn't shake the feeling they were on the precipice of something profound or potentially disastrous. The challenge he faced was as much internal as it was external. Could he embrace this path of vulnerability and learning in time to influence the outcome of the impending mission? The answer felt elusive, but the voice of the sniper echoed in his mind, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to confront them all head-on. And as they moved towards the gathering point, Frank caught a hint of the sniper's previously shielded expression, the glimmer of uncertainty mixed with curiosity. Was he beginning to recognize the possibilities in Frank's vision? Whatever transpires next could shift not just Frank's leadership style but reshape the very foundation of their team. The moment to redefine leadership approaches was upon him, and he could almost hear the pulse of opportunity in the air. Arriving at the squad's meeting point, the atmosphere turned taut with expectation. Would this be a conversation of resistance or acceptance? The future of their mission and their development as a cohesive unit hinged on what would unfold next. With courage surging within, Frank would soon discover whether he could guide them all toward a better way or if he'd be brought back to the harsh realities of tradition when they needed transformational strength the most. Frank stood at the front of the gathering, nearly overwhelmed by a volatile cocktail of anticipation and doubt lacing his thoughts. The faces of his team, stoic, attentive, curious, turned toward him as if he held the answers that might lead them into the fray. He cleared his throat, straining to project a sense of authority that felt increasingly fragile beneath the weight of his own convictions. "Listen up, everyone," he began, his voice steady, though his insides roiled. "We've got a mission ahead of us, but I want to take a moment to talk about something that may, in fact, change how we approach it. I believe that our strength lies not just in the skills we've honed but in our ability to be real with each other." A ripple of confusion spread across the group. He could see the wheels turning in their minds. Questions hung thick in the air, unexpressed yet palpable. The room felt colder, charged with skepticism, as if they were stepping onto the battlefield without their gear. Frank forged onward, wrestling with a deep-seated urge to retreat to safety, to the familiar cadence of tradition. But a flicker of the sniper's cautious encouragement bolstered him. "The stakes are high, I know. We have our protocols that kept us alive, and I respect that. But staying locked in old patterns might hinder us just as much. If we ignore the pressures each of us faces, the doubts, the fears, we're only leaving our vulnerabilities exposed." A veteran in the back shifted, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "What are you saying? We should hold hands and sing Kumbaya while we're out there?" Frank felt the weight of the challenge. The moment felt like a test of both their limits and his resolve. "No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm talking about discussing our fears, our hesitations. By acknowledging shared vulnerabilities, we become stronger not just as individuals, but as a unit. A cohesive team. It's the foundation for trust in the field." Another member interjected, disbelief framing his voice. "And you think that talking about our feelings is going to keep us alive when it matters? This is nonsense. Uncertainty crackled around the group like a live wire. "I get it," Frank admitted, his heart racing but resolve firming. "I don't want any of you to think of this as weakness, it's a test of our fortitude. Facing our fears together could transform how we operate. Don't we owe it to ourselves to explore new ground? We need to embrace the possibility that there's a better way, something we haven't yet discovered about how to function under pressure. This mission is the perfect opportunity to try." A tense silence enveloped the room. Frank took a step closer, searching each face for a sign of reluctance, doubt, or perhaps a subtle hint of agreement. He directed his gaze toward the veteran sitting in the back, acknowledging the resistance, the nagging skepticism that mirrored his own fears. "If we're going to make it through this, we need to build bonds beneath the surface chaos, preparing us for the moments when everything falls apart. Is anyone willing to take that leap with me?" The air felt thick, almost suffocating with unresolved emotions as Frank stood there, waiting. In that moment, assured shifts in thoughts flashed behind his colleagues' expressions, a flicker of contemplation. Could this unorthodox tactic serve a purpose beyond what they had known? As silence stretched like a taut wire, Frank clenched his fists, each second amplifying uncertainty and hope. What if they did choose to embrace this approach? Would it redefine their framework of trust and teamwork, or would they just revert back to what felt safe? Then, a voice broke through the quiet, resolute and steady, emanating from a corner of the room. "I'm in," it announced, drawing eyes like moths to a flame. As murmurs of agreement began flooding the space, Frank's heart soared, yet a nagging sense of dread anchored him. What lay ahead would test not only their strategies in combat but the very fabric of their camaraderie. The path toward transformation had opened, but would they navigate the complexities of vulnerability with strength or falter beneath the weight of old habits? With the ripples of fresh commitment resonating through the air, Frank prepared for the next stage, a mission cloaked under the guise of combat but steeped in deeper, more profound revelations. As they finalized their strategies, he felt a strange kinship with the growing acceptance among them. They were stepping cautiously into uncharted territory, and with every heartbeat, he questioned if the resolve they showed could evolve to become a formidable force. Would they be able to balance this raw authenticity with the primal survival instincts of the battlefield? As they set their sights on the impending mission, Frank sensed that the true essence of their leadership transformation was just beginning. A daunting yet exhilarating paradigm shift was on the horizon. And as the atmosphere thickened with potential, he couldn't shake the feeling that the mission would reveal not just the battlefield's challenges but also the hidden strengths and perhaps weaknesses of their team. The moment was almost upon them, and the weight of the unknown hung heavy in the air. Would vulnerability pave the way for resilience, or lead them to ruin? The mission day arrived, the sun rising like an ember burning against a backdrop of clouds, casting a fierce light on the chosen team. Frank felt the weight of countless eyes on him as he provided the charge. Each member stood steadfast, fortified by the promises of camaraderie previously discussed. They had embarked on this mission, not just as fighters but as a unified body willing to place their trust in one another. Reflections of past battles flickered through Frank's mind, juxtaposed against this pivotal moment of advocacy for vulnerability. He observed the nerves etched on his teammates' faces. They were poised to confront not only external threats but internal hesitations, the very essence of their training's heartbeat. The pending clash was not solely about survival, it was about existence beyond the battlefield, involving emotional resilience that had rarely been addressed. As the mission unfolded, the pressure mounted. Every tactical decision felt magnified, and so did the opportunities for connection. Early in the operations, a young sniper positioned himself beside Frank, the nervous energy palpable as they faced the adrenaline-charged atmosphere. "What if I lose it out there?" the sniper disclosed, vulnerability seeping into his tone. Frank, thinking back to the way vulnerability had strengthened his relationship with the other snipers, seized the moment. "Remember what we went over? Channel the fear, let it fuel your instincts. You've trained hard. Focus on what you can control, and we will move together." This wasn't just about tactics, it was an acknowledgement of their fears, a liberating affirmation that they were in this together. In the unfolding chaos of the mission, as gunfire erupted and shouts filled the air, Frank felt innate instincts trained long ago kick in, yet now they carried an enhanced depth, a sense of connection with his comrades. As bullets whizzed past, he presented a calm facade, but internally, his heart raced. He was in the thick of the action, yet his thoughts remained tethered to the idea of trust, affirmation, and relational strength. What was once an abstract principle, their discussions on vulnerability evolved into concrete action. As shots were fired, they shouted reminders, adjusted strategies, and celebrated small wins, never losing sight of their humanity in the process. Each success brewed a sense of kinship among them. They became not just soldiers but partners, breathing confidence into each other. Then came the ultimate test. A critical moment emerged where one member was injured from an unforeseen skirmish. The echoes of chaos morphed into a suffocating stillness that choked the air. The urgency pulsed, and Frank found himself anchoring the group, issuing orders while cradling their doubts. Remembering the importance of communication, he turned to the sniper who had previously expressed his fears. "We need you to call for support, don't hold back." His sniper took a deep breath, nodding. "Got it." The palpable energy before him ignited. The sniper's moment harnessed everything they had disciplined together. He activated the comms without hesitation, decisively leading their charge and rallying their strongest instincts. In that flash of lost seconds, they embodied the possibility of brotherhood fortified through forthrightness. Once the dust settled and their injured comrade was lifted to safety, a collective sigh punctuated the heavy atmosphere. They had not just survived, they had embraced vulnerabilities that interlaced their successes, allowing for a stronger foundation to arise amid chaos. The lessons learned transcended the battlefield that day. As they gathered post-mission, sweat mingling with awkward laughter, Frank realized that their vulnerabilities exposed the depth of human courage, creating a bond that fortified each soldier's heart. "I knew we could do this," Frank began, feeling an impromptu pride swelling within. "Today, we fought alongside each other not just as snipers but as people who understand what's at stake." Eyes gleamed brighter as murmurs of agreement floated through the group. Frank stood taller, embraced by a stark clarity. It wasn't simply the mission or victory, it was the journey by their side, an experience fortified by endurance and mutual recognition. Every intimate exchange throughout the operation wove their individual narratives into a tapestry of resilience. In that moment, Frank recognized a pivotal transformation had occurred not just in himself, but in everyone around him. They had shifted from masked uncertainties to a collective courage that sought mutual support, a valuable understanding in the shadows of tension. Moving forward, Frank would no longer reside in the dichotomy of mentor and soldier. He had carved out a space as a leader through authenticity, creating a model of trust that transcended limitations imposed by duty. With clear sight into the weight of his own fears and an unwavering compassion for his teammates, he felt an extraordinary confidence surging within him. His legacy as a mentor had evolved into one of a leader willing to remain vulnerable alongside the warriors he guided. As night enveloped the training ground, casting the day's trials into dusk, Frank leaned back and sighed, feeling fulfilled. He had achieved not just participation in the narrative of these soldiers' development, but also the monumental realization of his deeper purpose. He was a vessel of change, and now was the time to foster that growth into every aspect of their shared journey, and he would carry that inspiration far beyond the range, speaking out about his journey to the broader community, embracing the leadership conference unapologetically. Each step forward would reveal who he had become, an embodiment of the very principles cultivated on and off the battlefield. The mission had proven more than just a challenge. It illuminated the path of transformation, threading confidence through vulnerability. He vowed to seize the momentum. It was a promise to every soldier he guided and an unwavering commitment to facing whatever came next head-on. This was the moment he had been waiting for, and he would never look back. If you found this story inspiring, remember to take action. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will drive your spirit forward. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, ensuring more breakthroughs like Frank's reach those who need them. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Let's ignite the discussion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and embark on their own journeys of transformation. Your support matters, so let us keep the momentum going.